Today on the Dr. Geo Prostate Podcast, we welcome Dr. Amy Rothenberg, a true example of resilience and purpose. A licensed naturopathic doctor for over 36 years and 2017 Physician of the Year from the American Association of Naturopathic Physicians. After undergoing 18 rounds of chemotherapy in 2014, Dr. Rothenberg completed her first triathlon just 6 months later and hasn't stopped racing since. Her best-selling book, You Finished Treatment, Now What? Offers cancer survivors a compassionate, practical roadmap to reclaim their health. From patient care to ballroom dancing, Dr. Rothenberg embodies what it means to live fully. Let's get into it.
Before I proceed, I just want to clarify that this podcast and all Dr. Geo content is separate from my faculty position at NYU Langone Health. The views and opinions on this podcast are my own. Our guests and sponsors are curated by me and not affiliated with NYU Langone Health. Sponsors are a way for us to provide high quality information at no cost to you so that you can take better charge of your prostate health, testosterone, and erectile function, and also how to live better with age. Welcome to the Dr. Geo Prostate Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Geo. And of course, as always, it's my intention to help you optimize your health, your prostate health, your overall health, and how to live better with age. Today's guest is Dr. Amy Rothenberg, who you're going to say, well, why Dr. Rothenberg here? I mean, she doesn't have a prostate. She's a female, clearly. She has an amazing story that's going to inspire you. It's going to inspire you, particularly those guys that are watching right now who are struggling with advanced cancer or advanced prostate cancer. And I think you're going to be moved by it. This is one of those scenarios where the doctor becomes the patient. With no further ado, Dr. Amy Rothenberg. Amy, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you for having me.
I can't tell you how happy I was when you sent me an email and you said, look, I want to tell my story. I know I don't have prostate cancer, but I think a lot of people will love the story and get inspired by it. And I was like, are you kidding me? I love talking to you, first of all, and we don't get to talk much. And I said, absolutely. Send me a copy of your book, which I have right here in front of me, which is You Finished Treatment, Now What? A field guide for cancer survivors. And we're going to dig into your book and your process and your journey. So I was ecstatic, and here we are. You're on the podcast. Thank you so much.
Yeah, here we are. Awesome. Thank you for having me. And it's a fabulous podcast. If people are just tuning in for the first time, go back and watch a lot of the past episodes. You'll learn so much.
Oh, yes. Thank you for that. I guess you've watched a little or heard. So where do we start? Naturopathic doctor, you've been a naturopath for a long time, seen many patients. You disclosed to me that you've been a naturopathic physician for 40 years. And you've had several bouts of cancer. Before we go there, what's the family history? What's the genetic history? Are you predisposed? Did it catch you off guard? Tell me, how did you?
The answer is yes, yes, and yes.
Yes, and yes.
Yes, my family history is kind of interesting. A lot of people lived very long lives, well into their 90s, which is beautiful. And then other people died quite young, including my mom, who died in her late 40s of metastatic breast cancer. And my sister was diagnosed also quite early in her early 40s. And so we all had the assumption that we must have one of the strong genetic markers, the BRCA mutation, something like that. And I tested for that in my 40s. I tested negative. And I then retested because a lot of these genetic tests, they get better over time. And the research, we just learn more and more how to look at the genetics. And so I went back in my 50s, I was retested and I tested negative again. About a year later, a couple months after a normal mammogram, I was 54 at the time, I found a lump in my breast on New Year's Day. Happy New Year. And I was diagnosed with early stage breast cancer. And at that point, they said to me, well, you probably just need a lumpectomy and a little radiation, you'll be fine. And I basically said, take them both, take my breasts, because I felt at that point, though I didn't have the BRCA mutation, clearly we had something, and I didn't want to be going through this again a few years later. So we did that. I went through all the treatment. I had 4 rounds of chemo. And then they asked me to get tested for the BRCA mutation. I said, I was just tested last year. And they said the test got better. So in fact, I did carry the BRCA mutation. Our family carries a deletion. So a deletion means something that's not there, which is a little harder to see than something that's there. It's a kind of mutation, but they weren't looking for the deletions in those days. Of course, now anybody who has the testing done like that, after speaking with a genetics counselor, they do look for deletions. So then, because I was so glad I had both breasts removed, because I would have had to go have the other one removed at some point, the idea then is to remove your ovaries. And they said to me, why don't you wait a year or two? And it's not a big rush, but when you recover from the breast cancer treatments, I said, I don't think so. I finished my breast cancer treatments in July. I think I waited for my hemoglobin to hit a 12 and let my blood recover from the chemo. And I said, let's get after those ovaries. And at that prophylactic surgery to remove my ovaries and my fallopian tubes, cancer was found on both ovaries. So that was a big.
You didn't have any symptoms?
I had no symptoms. I had no symptoms ever. I felt perfect. In fact, the night before I found the lump in my breast, my husband and I are ballroom dancers. It was New Year's Eve. We were out till 3 a.m. I think I danced every single dance. I never sat down. Great energy. I looked fantastic, And that was really a blow, the ovarian cancer diagnosis. And there was a lot of treatment that followed that, 12 rounds of chemo. So that was, I've had my found the lump on January 1st. My last chemo was on January 2nd the following year for the ovarian cancer. So it was like a whole year kind of devoted to healing. Now, I had a dream team at Mass General. I had fantastic state-of-the-art, world-class care. And then I had my naturopathic doctor support team, including my amazing husband, Dr. Paul Herskew, and others, guiding me, doing everything that we could do to help enhance the efficacy. So to make for instance, any cancer cells that were still around more chemosensitive or more radiosensitive, and just leaned into those things that we know as providers and we have been using with patients for decades, and to address any of the side effects that did arise, because any cancer diagnosis guarantees you're going to hit some bumps on the road. And so the most important thing is not to go too high, not to go too low, and just we're going to hit some bumps on the road. Know you're going to hit some bumps on the road, and then have a team that you can work with to help address the bumps along the way. And then afterward, to mop up, which is basically the topic of my book. And so I did that, I did recover completely. I felt completely 100% myself. At my last chemo for my ovarian cancer, I said to my husband, all right, in 6 months, how about we do our first triathlon together? I'm a very athletic, sporty, kind of gym rat person.
Yeah, you played 3 sports in high school.
I did. My husband said to me, okay, I'm going to be on your photography team. He's not exactly that same way. Anyway, we had a wonderful.
This is around 2014, 2015?
This was 2014. The treatments were all done at the very beginning of 2015. And so in July that year, my 3 kids, my 3 siblings, their kids, we all did a triathlon together. And, I only say that because for me, part of what was important was to have a goal, have something fun and interesting, have a little adventure. Mm-hmm. I spent a year not really having very many adventures and just doing a lot of things that weren't that fun. And I talk to my patients about this a lot, like even when you're in treatment, even when you're living with metastatic disease, that it's important to make plans. It's important to set some goals, even if they're very small and just a couple of hours or days or weeks ahead. I think that's an important part of our healing and an important part of being alive. If you're still alive, making plans and trying to do new things once in a while or old things that you enjoy, I think is an important part of life and quality of life. And we're not just in it for how long can we survive? We're in it for what else can we do that's interesting and fun and gives us pleasure, or gives us a sense of connection or sense of accomplishment.
There's a healing element to that, no?
Yeah, 100%.
You're a naturopathic doctor. So I get many patients, you might as well, who get diagnosed with cancer. And they say, look, I'm doing nothing conventional. I'm not doing chemo. Chemo kills you. I saw my mother or whoever die from chemo. You as a naturopath, you chose to do integrative. You took root, and then you did other things that we're going to get into.
Yeah.
At no point in your mind, you said, I'm not doing chemo. Was it a no-brainer? And if so, why?
I never said that. I never thought that, because a few different reasons. I was young and strong and healthy, and I knew that I could withstand the conventional medical approach. And I also understand and appreciate that in terms of oncology. It used to be, what's the most amount of harshness we can give a person that won't kill them, as opposed to now what I feel it's become is more, what's the least amount that we can give people that will get after the cancer and they will be able to survive and thrive. So I kind of, and I've seen so many people through conventional cancer care, I thought I could probably handle it. I mean, did I have moments where I wished I didn't have to go to radiation or go to get another dose of chemo? Of course. But I never entertained not using conventional care because I knew the statistics about my disease. I mean, I'm an educated, medical provider. I knew what my statistics were and around both survival and around recurrence. And I just didn't want any part of that. I have so much to live for. So I felt like, let's just go. And we always borrow the term from scuba diving. We're going to plan the dive and we're going to dive the plan. And we're going to do everything we can to be as strong and healthy as possible. And to remember that I've used a lifetime of skill and education and practice learning about things related to my head game, mindfulness meditation, relaxation, trying to address things like anxiety and overwhelm, not to mention the whole silo related to diet and eating right for going through cancer care and recovery, and what is the role of exercise and what is the role of the microbiome. I was like training for this my whole life in some ways. And in fact, when I work with young people who don't have cancer, just like they're coming in, they got allergies, they got skin stuff, I always save like 5 minutes of the visit to talk about what do you got in your toolkit just to help you with relaxation and being centered and staying grounded. Because it's these skills and these tools that are easy enough to learn, often free, there's no side effects, that when we have them in our toolkit and we can have access to them and we use them and they bring us some comfort and some focus, there's going to be times in our lives when we hit other kinds of bumps in the road, not just related to illness or cancer. And it's really great to have some skills on hand to lean into. If you're in the midst of it, it's very hard to learn a new skill. It's harder. Yeah, so I leaned into every one of those skills that I ever had, both as a patient and then as now what I would call myself a thriver, survivor, thriver. I feel like I was training a lot of my life for having to go through something hard like that.
Did it? I have an idea. We've spoken before of your lifestyle, your life with your family, and it seemed to me like you live a fulfilled, joyous life.
Yes.
Oftentimes with my patients with prostate cancer, and I say this all the time, you're a thriver. You're not just a survivor. This is an opportunity for you to live even better to a large degree moving forward. You likely ignored your health. It was secondary, tertiary in terms of importance. And now you're going to, do well as a result of this diagnosis.
Yeah.
For you, that wasn't necessarily the case, or did your value system change after that diagnosis? What changed just psychologically and even spiritually for you?
I don't think very much has changed. I feel like I'm still the person I was. I still lean into my faith and my family and my community. And I've always been a person who is very grateful and very appreciative of all the many blessings that I have. I think that to have your life and you're facing your mortality, it's like right here when you get a cancer diagnosis, that does move a person. I mean, I was certainly moved by that, but I don't think it shook my basic core values in any appreciable kind of way. I'm probably a little more anxious than I ever was before. There's a whole thing in the cancer world, it's called somatosensory amplification. A lot of times cancer patients, cancer survivors, they get a little thing and they think, oh my God, I mean, I'm not over the top with it, but it does sometimes happen like that. I wish I didn't have that, and I lean into all the other things I just described to help with those kinds of things. But I've always been an upbeat person, and that I know that's a blessing. And I think there are things we can do to cultivate optimism and cultivate appreciation and cultivate gratitude. I talk about this with my patients all the time. Some people are just kind of born that way. That's great. I consider myself in that silo, if you will. But it doesn't mean that you can't work toward that if it's not your nature. And also some people have harder lives. Like clearly, that's just so true. Some people just have born into families with a lot of dysfunction, born into families with a lot of alcoholism, there's been abuse, there's not enough money, there's discord, there's separation, divorce. These are all things that impact people for sure. But, we know that it's not so much what happens, it's what our reactions are to those things that happen. And I think we can have some control over that and some ability to navigate that with some intentionality.
Yeah, for sure. So this is 2014. So these two cancers, breast and ovarian,
Yeah.
they were caught by chance.
Yes.
So that's
Very
as good
early.
as it gets, right?
That's
I
as good as
mean,
it gets.
by the time most people catch their cancers, things have advanced.
That's right. That's right. So I was
So you,
very lucky that way. I'm
so
very
you-
unlucky that I got them, but I was very lucky that it was early.
yeah, for sure. And you were healthy, so you were able to withstand the chemo. I always say, I remember giving a talk years ago, just a general wellness talk. I said, look, the importance of exercise and blah, 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 and diet. And somebody gets up and says, look, we're all going to die anyway. I mean, I'd rather eat what I want to eat and do what I want to do. I said, well, that's a very interesting point, actually. I don't disagree with that. But you reduce the risk. But if you do get ill, you're going to come out the other side likely a whole lot better just by having a stronger system, stronger body.
Yeah. I mean, we know that people that are going through cancer treatment who, let's say, are also diabetic, that they have a harder time. Anybody with pre-existing other comorbidities, we call them, that can be harder, or they're on several medications, and we have to take that into account. As a doctor, I'm taking people where they are exactly as they come in with no judgment whatsoever.
Yeah.
But when I have younger patients in my practice, I'm always talking about, like, it's probably worth taking a little time to think about this, because stuff happens, and the healthier you are, that's psychologically, cognitively, spiritually, and physically, going into a challenging diagnosis, in general, the better off you're going to be. Now,
yeah, for sure.
Bad things happen to good people all the time. So a lot of my cancer patients get in that loop of, why me, why me, why me? I don't get it. I did everything right. And I will say that there are a lot of us like that. We did everything right. So some of us have a genetic predisposition, but some of us, the environment is a huge factor. We don't totally understand all the different ways the environment is interacting with our biochemistry and making younger and younger people more likely to get these challenging illnesses. It's all connected. And I'm of the belief that if it's not something that I can change, that I shouldn't really worry about it. It was just easier said than done.
Easy. That's a tough nut to crack there for most people.
It is.
So you undergo chemo. Aren't you thinking of the repercussions of that? Like, it really, chemo breaks you down, and it doesn't do it temporarily. You could do it for a lifetime. At that time, weren't you thinking, my goodness, what's going to happen a year, 2 years, 5 years? And also, what else did you do so the chemo breaks you down, an effort of killing cancer cells. What did you do to build your body up during that time that worked synergistically, perhaps, with chemo?
You bet. Well, first of all, it's important to work with a person who really understands the biochemistry and the biophysiology and the drug interactions, drug nutrient interactions, drug herb interactions. Yeah. Find yourself a licensed naturopathic doctor or an integrative medicine provider who really understands what you can do that's safe to do, that is not going to interfere with the efficacy of the chemotherapy. Yeah. So we know that chemotherapy, and the way I like to frame it for patients, is like, this is a very, very strong medicine. It's strong and it's toxic because it has a big job to do. That said, there are ways to protect the other parts of your body during chemotherapy so that you hopefully do not get any persistent, long-lasting symptoms from the chemo. And sort of by drug, we understand which drugs cause things more like, let's say, peripheral neuropathy, or a real impact on the red blood cells, a real impact on the platelets, or problems with chemo brain and things like that. There are so many things that we can do that are specific for the drug that a person is on. So I can speak to some of those in a moment. Some of the general things that we think about, we know that when people have a fasting mimicking diet during many kinds of chemo, it seems to help the chemo be more effective and the person develops less side effects. So for many of my rounds of chemo, not all, because by the end of a lot of chemo, I wasn't strong enough and healthy enough to do it. But certainly during the first many, I think I was doing a 600 calorie vegan diet on the day before, the day of, and the day after my chemo. And there's some good evidence to show that people who do that, they seem to have good results meaning that the tumor cells or the tumor markers, they show some, or the cancer itself shows some chemosensitivity, and also seems to reduce the number of side effects people get. So that's one important thing. And then we want to be sure that the person is staying well hydrated, well rested, and if at all possible, to keep moving. I mean, of course, people going through something like that, oh, I just want to get on the couch and like that. But a gentle walk, even 15 minutes, 2 or 3 times a day. First of all, that helps you metabolize the chemo through all your organs of elimination. As a dyed-in-the-wool naturopathic doctor, we speak a lot about the emunctory systems. The emunctory systems are the ones that really help us get rid of the natural byproducts of the digestive process and the things that we don't need. So breathing is one important way that we get rid of parts of through the breathing process, having good bowel movements every day, urinating, sweating, all of the ways that we can help metabolize and get rid of the toxic elements, if you will, of the chemotherapy without interfering with its efficacy. So this is key. And then we know, like, the things that cause peripheral neuropathy, we know that it's safe for the most part for people to use B vitamins and fish oil to help prevent peripheral neuropathy, or to use the cold mittens and the cold booties. It's not that pleasant to sit there for hours on end with the booties and the hands, but if you know that it will prevent you from having a lifetime of difficulty with peripheral neuropathy, I've had that. This is a conversation that I have with patients to consider. So I think that there are things to do to feel proactive. One of the things that a lot of my cancer patients have shared with me is they feel powerless, and they feel like they have this thing is happening to them, and they're kind of a victim, and they're just at the mercy of these plans that somebody's making, and it's so overwhelming. So anything people can do to help take back a little bit of the ownership and a little bit of the kind of, they're the one helping drive this ship, I think, can be very helpful.
The empowerment element is so healing. It's not just, okay, doc, do whatever you need to do. It's like, no, I'm in charge of this body as well, you know?
Yeah.
How do you, so I have my patients with advanced prostate cancer, you know, some of them are on hormone deprivation therapy. Some of them are undergoing hormone deprivation therapy with chemo. And so I have a whole exercise program around that. The chemo element is once every 3 weeks or so, 3 to 4 weeks, or 3 to 6 weeks, depends. And during the week that they get chemo, we do FMD, fasting mimicking diet. And I tell them, in this particular scenario, lower the intensity of the exercise. You may feel better the week after. And then if you do, just listen to your body and do a little bit more.
Yeah.
But the feedback I get is like, look, it's just hard to get there and go. You know, the elements that you bring to the table that I don't, and, you know, I don't want to, is that you have a history of it, unfortunately, or depending on how you look at it, and I don't, right? So I can't say, what do you mean, man up or something, like, you know, go. What I do tell them is, like, just listen to your body, right? So if you're exhausted, go rest. If you're tired, go for a 15-minute walk and then see how you do. How do you prescribe exercise to your cancer patients, and how did you do it when you were like, I'm not into it today?
Yeah. I mean, it is a very, very good question. Everybody's different. Some people have a long history of body memory and muscle memory and pleasure and joy and a good feeling about their body and about movement and exercise, whether it's yoga, dance, walking, biking, whatever. Other people don't. They just never got into it. Whatever reason, older women, a lot of times, like, just never, they were before Title IX, and they just, or men, that wasn't their thing, you know? So for people that have the history, helping them tune into that can be helpful by just reminding them that even a little bit is good. Even 5 minutes is good. I mean, I had some days when I felt so bad, and I live in the Northeast, it was wintertime. My goal was 100 steps in the morning. That's like 3 or 4 times up and down my hallway. And then the next day I'm going to try 200 steps, and just small achievable goals, and letting go of any expectations, and also no judgment. And if you skip a day, it's fine. But I think information for people is important. So the idea of like metabolizing the chemo, and also when you're better perfused, meaning when your blood is moving to all the parts of your body, you're actually enhancing the efficacy of the chemotherapy because it's getting to the places it needs to go. So being sedentary, our blood doesn't move as well. And
Yep.
so I think a lot of times I try to, it depends on the person I'm working with, but if it's somebody who's very mentally engaged, I try to appeal to that, the thinking part of their being. Rest and naps are beautiful. Escapism, essential. You got to listen to the podcast, watch the movies, listen to books on tape, listen to stand-up comedy, whatever it is. Super important and nothing wrong with that.
Guilt-free.
Guilt-free, 100% guilt-free. Yeah. But it is true that study after study, I mean, it's not like we're making this stuff up, has said that people who continue to exercise or who start an exercise habit during cancer treatment and after treatment is over have fewer side effects, better quality of life, and better health outcomes, like all three of those. So this is not something that is sort of like, is it good? Is it important? We know that this is important. And so I try to emphasize the research. I am able to share from my own experience. I also will, if I understand that the person is a very social being, that's something that we'll lean into. Like if I know they're a social being, it's like, make it, ask your friends, tell them that you don't need them to bring you a casserole. You don't need them to come mow your lawn. What you need them to do is come take you for a 10-minute walk. So
Beautiful.
Cash in on the parts that are, we always say, where is the most leverage that I can get with this particular patient? And sometimes the leverage has to do with what's going to really motivate them.
Prolon is the only nutrition program patented to support longevity, health span, and protect lean body mass through cellular rejuvenation. This 5-day fasting mimicking diet keeps your body in a fasting state while allowing you to eat nourishing foods. Over 5 days, your body is rejuvenated at the cellular level, supporting fat loss with muscle protection, boosting energy and mental clarity, and giving you a complete body reset. Your kit includes everything you need for the full 5-day transformation. Click the link in the description to learn more and see our partner pricing.
So,
Beautiful.
yeah.
Not being in isolation and having community is so important for general health. It has to be very important, even more so for those that are going through the cancer process. For men, which is the areas that I focus on the most, they have a hard time with that. They have a hard time with asking for help. I don't know if it's machismo, whatever it is, not being vulnerable, other mishigas that you guys would say in Hebrew in our heads, right? That limits us from living a fulfilled life, particularly, under circumstances like cancer treatments, therapy, etc. So yeah, community is very important. That's such a key takeaway here.
And I think that most cancer centers now, like in the big teaching hospitals and in small towns, there's often a nonprofit cancer center where they have support groups. And for, that's not going to work for everybody. Some people are like, I don't want to just talk about cancer. But for some people, it's essential and it's so good and they make lifelong friends. It's terrific. And for other people, they can go there and it's not necessarily about the cancer. It's going to be like a painting class or like a
Something
Reiki
else,
session.
anything else. Yeah.
And that, I think it's true. It's true. And then some people, I have found that I have to respect. They're going to go through this by putting their shoulder down and looking straight ahead and blinders on and just get through it. And as a person who's been at this for a long time, I really appreciate that I have to work with the patient that I have. I can't work with some idealized idea of a patient that I want. I just have to work with the person that I have. I think I'm also good at helping people understand the trajectory. And now it's a little bit different if we're talking with a person who's just newly diagnosed going through treatment versus somebody who's living with illness. But a person who's newly diagnosed, a lot of times it's going to be a period of time and then it's going to end. Not their life, but the treatment's going to end. And for somebody like that, you just got to be sure that they understand there's a timeline. This is the timeline. This is usually what happens. This is what's typical. It's very helpful for people to understand that. For people that are living with metastatic disease, it's a totally different model that we're working with in terms of really being present, really being in the moment, understanding that for some of these people, and this has been true for a number of my patients, if they can live long enough, who knows what the research is going to be coming up with for potential new approaches for them. And people can take advantage of that in clinical trials. I always say to people in that situation, be sure that you are in touch with the person at your hospital, that is in charge of clinical trials. And are you a candidate for a clinical trial? Because some clinical trials it takes a long time for some of those things to get into the general recommendations, if you will. Some people can be the beneficiary of a clinical trial.
Beautiful. So here you are, 2016, 2017, and you're like, probably on top of your game in terms of
Yes.
health.
Yes.
Things are moving and grooving, literally, because you're a ballroom dancer. So you were grooving.
I was.
Then a year ago, or so ago, so we're talking 2024 or so, 2023?
Summer of 2023, I was at the hospital for routine lab work and
feeling good, no symptoms.
I felt perfect. My husband had just come back from a big hiking trip in Utah and had a big family vacation, family reunion. I was feeling perfect. My book was doing great. I was doing podcasts and talks all over, feeling just fabulous. And I went for some routine blood work and my counts were very bad. And they said, you need a bone marrow biopsy. And a couple of days later, I was diagnosed with leukemia. And, when you feel perfect and you get news like that, it's a bit of a sucker punch. And I really...
By the way, that's almost every prostate cancer patient I see. Almost every prostate cancer patient I see, they feel great. How? I mean, why did this happen? How did this happen? I feel amazing. That's typical story.
Very, very typical. And it's particularly typical of early disease, which is what I had. And I immediately was in treatment a week later. And the treatment for leukemia is very intense, and they basically have to almost kill you. And then I was a good candidate for a stem cell transplant. And I miraculously had 30 perfect matches. It was
so here in the U.S.,
yes.
Stem cell transplant, was it being studied at the time, or is it part of routine care for this type of situation?
That was part of the routine care. There were some differences in the approaches that I took. We really advocated for a slightly different approach for me based on my age, based on some new research that was coming out of MD Anderson at the time. And my doctors at Mass General were open to considering that. I got into that clinical trial. So I spent that fall in treatment.
Can you talk a little bit about the treatment? So no chemo at the time?
Yeah, there was chemo for about a month. I had couple of different kinds of chemo. I immediately was no evidence of disease. I just had a very, very positive response to the chemo, which is great. But we did a second round just to lock it in. And then as part of the different clinical trial, I was on an immune therapy that was coming in through a PICC line that I had placed. I wore a fanny pack. I took it in 28 days, 24/7. For 2 months. I got a week off in between those things. Immunotherapy is just sort of training your own immune system to go after any little residual cancer cells that might have been around in my blood. And then after I...
Is that a conventional treatment? Is that a conventional treatment or a natural treatment? Sorry, I got cut off there. Did you hear the question? I'm sorry. We got cut off there a little bit. Was the immune treatment a natural treatment?
Conventional treatment. I did a lot of natural treatment alongside of that, but that was all conventional care.
Okay. Sorry, continue.
Yeah. And there were many things that we did during that time to protect my inner organs, my kidneys, my bladder, my lungs. There are different ways that different ones of those drugs affect different systems of the body. So we were, on the side doing all of our botanical medicines, nutritional supplements, particular diets, homeopathic remedies, visualizations, affirmations, a lot of exercise. And I'm making it sound like it was a walk in the park. It was not. It was arduous. And those are very harsh treatments, the chemo. The immunotherapies that I took, the blinatumomab, its side effects are basically tumor load dependent. And because my own tumor load was basically non-existent, I had no symptoms from the blinatumomab. I mean, I had the PICC line in and I had to wear this thing all the time, but I felt pretty much myself. I didn't have any hair. I was pretty skinny, but I did feel pretty much myself. I had a couple weeks off, and then I went into the hospital for about 3.5 weeks to prepare for a stem cell transplant. So before a stem cell transplant, they basically have to remove, it would be great if they could just remove all your white cells from your bone marrow. So your bone marrow is this incredible machine which knows how to take stem cells, your own stem cells, and make them into platelets, white blood cells, and red blood cells, and all the different kinds of white blood cells. And it's sort of a very complicated situation and setup. And because they can't uniquely get rid of just the white cells, when they destroy your bone marrow before they put in the new stem cells, your platelets go way, 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 way down. So you are potentially susceptible to bleeding, either stroke or other kind of bleeding. And your red cells go way, 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 way down. So you're exhausted because you're so anemic. I think my hemoglobin was a 3 at the time of the transplant. Wow. My platelets were a 9, not 909, and my white count was 0, literally 0. So you're very susceptible to infection. So that's why you're in the hospital. It's all in the hospital. You don't ever get out of the hospital there for that time, because they want to make sure you don't bleed out and you don't die from an infection. And they lose a chunk of people. 20-30% of people die in the process of getting ready for the transplant. And I definitely had days where I curled up on my side like a little centipede and didn't move too much. On the days I felt good enough, I walked the halls. I mean, sometimes I walked 4 miles around the halls of Mass General on the floor, under 10, with incredible nursing staff. There's a lot of pre-meds that are given. There are a lot of medicines to prevent side effects, or a lot of medicines to prevent. We had a good relationship with our doctor. Some things I declined. Some things I said, I'm only going to take half the dose. Some things you don't want to get into the prescribing cascade. So they're going to give you Zofran for the nausea. Well, the Zofran is going to make you very constipated. Then they're going to give you stool softeners. And then the stool softeners are going to make you have really bad diarrhea. Then they're going to give you Lamo. I was like, I think I'll just do a lot of ginger and half the dose of Zofran, or like that. I also had a lot of, at that time, intrathecal chemo, which is chemotherapy put directly into the spine, because leukemia cells are known to hide in the spine and the brain. So they don't want that to happen. So that wasn't that fun. In fact, I had asked my doctor if it's possible, could I do the cold cap? Because I didn't really want to lose my hair again. I lost it several times before. It's not that fun. She says, well, we don't allow that with leukemia, because leukemia cells like to hide out in the brain, and we want the chemo to get all the way to the very tips of everywhere. So anyway, went through all that, got my stem cell transplant. And by the way, the stem cells come in a little baggie. It's like you could put a tuna fish sandwich. It's just this tiny little bag. And they go in over about 20 minutes. I had an incredible stem cell donor from Israel, Maya, who I have now since met. And she's an amazing young woman. And I have the energy of this 24-year-old person running through me. In fact, I had a bone marrow biopsy a few months ago. Thank God, no sign of leukemia. At that time, they also do like a DNA fingerprint on your blood cells. And my DNA fingerprint now is 100% Maya, like 0% Amy. So that it's all.
I did think when I saw you today on video that you looked a bit younger. Maybe that's all due to
thank you,
right? Maya stem cells.
Yeah, I just turned 65, so I feel so happy to be alive and well, and so grateful for this young woman who, not knowing me, it's a non-known. You do not learn who your donor is or your recipient for a year. They want to make sure that the recipient survives. So I didn't know her for years. She did this knowing not a bit about who this part of her was going to. And I should say that for the donor, it's not as arduous as like being a bone marrow donor. Now, she has a few shots in the arm for some days leading up of Neulasta, which is kind of bumps up her white count. Then she sits with her arms out as if she's giving blood. Well, she is, out of one arm. And it's going back in the other arm. And in the middle, there's like a sieve, and they're catching the stem cells. And that's what came frozen over the seas and land to me. And,
how difficult is that matching process? Is that a difficult process? Sometimes people wait a long time, years. How does that work?
The matching, it's a little bit different than somebody like waiting for a kidney. There's a whole registry. In America, it's called Be the Match. In Israel, it's called Ezer Metzion. And people can, and this is something for your listeners to consider, particularly if they're under 40. Stem cell transplant, they want a perfect match, and they want the person under 40. Under 30 is even better. And it's done by a swab on the inside of the cheek. It doesn't hurt. There's no side effects, and then they basically go into a registry. So right after, not that far after my time of my diagnosis, I met up with the transplant team and they said, well, we've already got our eyes on several donors who are very good matches for you. And we're going to keep working the system and see who's still available, still interested. We want to then make sure that they have the same blood types. It's not only around the antigens on the stem cells, but it has to do blood type and having not had certain other illnesses in their lives. So it's a bit of an interview process. But yeah, anybody who can be a donor, anybody can be in the registry. And if you're young, you can save a person's life. And if you don't want to do that, and this is true for any age, everybody who's listening, if they're able, should go give blood or give platelets because they're life-saving. In the process of my own experience with leukemia, I did not need very many transfusions. I think I had 4 total, and some people have 30, 40. But there's always blood shortages. And if you have a particular kind of blood that they really like, if you don't mind making an appointment and going and giving blood, it's very, very helpful for many people going through all kinds of illnesses.
Life-saving.
Let's put in a plug for the Red Cross or your hospital. A lot of times people do it now at their hospital. You just call, where can I give blood? And they will let you know.
All right, let's get into some of the naturopathic things you did to keep you well. Maybe we can talk about, you can start wherever you like, your diet, the herbals that you took that were useful, et cetera. Take it away.
Well, we knew that the research showed that going into a transplant, it was good to go into an environment that was somewhat methionine restricted. Methionine is an amino acid, one of the building blocks of protein. So that translates basically into a vegan diet plus fish. So for the months leading up to my transplant, that's the diet that I ate. When I felt well enough. During some of the chemo, I didn't feel well enough. I needed sort of my comfort foods. For me, that's like rice pudding. I mean, I can't even tell you. It's just what it is. And I always say that to my patients. If you need that, you just eat whatever you need right now.
Guilt-free. And you're not making your cancer worse by doing that.
No, 100%.
Yeah.
So, and then I think in general, after that and between times, I just ate a very anti-inflammatory diet. So that's characterized by lean protein, whole grains, healthy fats, and lots of fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds. And that's the diet I've always eaten. So that was nothing new for me. Then we have in our home, and I also had in my hospital room. And by the way, I made my hospital room beautiful. It was just beautiful. I put up beautiful things in the window. I had my art table over there. I had my guitar over there. I brought my own blanket. I had my own lamp. That was a very good idea. The lighting is terrible in hospitals. So, I mean, it's very good, the lighting, but it's not nice lighting. So
good idea.
I brought all my own food. I had people cook for me. There was a Whole Foods right around the corner. Lucky in that way.
So don't eat the hospital food. What should we do with the hospital food?
Now, some people can't afford to bring in their own food. You can make better choices off a hospital menu. Usually you can have a menu. You can choose the day before what you want your next meals. And if you know what you're going for in terms of, for me to make healthy blood cells, my whole goal is I got to make healthy blood cells. I need adequate protein. I'm a person who weighs about 140 pounds. I need about 80 grams of protein a day to make adequate blood cells. So I was counting my protein. I'm not a neurotic person. I've never been on a diet. I've just not ever needed that kind of thing. But I did start counting protein because sometimes by the end of the day, I only had 40 grams of protein. Okay, let's make something with, like a little protein powder or some kind of shake or something like that.
Again, methionine low protein diet.
Yes.
Still.
Yes. Now that's not an anti-cancer diet. That's just a diet that's better in terms of the microbiome of putting a transplant into.
Right.
I also was very mindful about my microbiome. So each day, except when my white count was too low, I would try to eat something that was fermented or cultured to just diversify my microbiome. And then every day I had about a half a teaspoon of potato starch. Potato starch is one of our best forms of prebiotic. Prebiotic is like what we need for the probiotics to work and to live and reproduce and make more of themselves. And it's very easy. It mixes into anything. It has no taste. It's pennies on the dose. Super easy for anybody to use. And potato starch has kind of been maligned over the years.
Yeah, I was just going to say, people are listening and say, did she just say potato starch? Like a high carb diet, which I'm not supposed to do because it's not good and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I'm not saying like a big bowl of mashed potatoes, although that was definitely one of my comfort foods. I'm saying just for the prebiotic, Yeah, a tiny bit. It's like a thumbnail amount. You don't need a lot
All right.
of
All
potato
right.
salad. Very good for that. And then, staying hydrated, like that's probably my worst event. I'm just not a particularly thirsty person. I would lay out my 6 or 7 glasses of water and just like, they'd be like hovering over me all day long. Mostly so that I can keep flushing out all the heavy duty drugs and meds. Then we use different kinds of botanical formulas to protect my bladder. Like they would tell me, we're going to give you this drug because this chemo is very hard on the bladder. I would take the drug, but I would also use the botanical medicines that are very soothing. Corn silk is one of the big botanicals that I love for the bladder.
Yeah.
Would use that. I leaned in a lot to the anti-nausea things that I know about, the acupressure points in here, over here, there's a bunch of them. You can look them up online. What's the best acupressure points for nausea? My husband probably got very strong thumbs from just rubbing my acupressure points all over because I did not like the anti-nausea meds. I didn't feel well on them. So
How much ginger did you consume as an anti-nausea
the
botanical?
only kind of ginger that I can really do is I don't have any proprietary relationship. The Gin company, there's like a hard sucker of ginger candy. That was the only one that ever really seemed to work for me. I couldn't do the candy ginger. It's a little too much sugar. I'm sure this other one has sugar as well, but it's not the granulated sugar like you get it stuck in your teeth. I had those in my mouth a lot of the time. And then we know that in the brain, the nausea center is kind of adjacent to the anxiety center. So I understood that if I was feeling nauseous, one of the best things I could do was just really breathe through it, breathe, deep breathing, do alternate nostril breathing from the yoga tradition, or counted breaths was a very good thing for me. I'm somebody who responds very well to touch. So my husband was, Husband of the Year award again, but rubbing my back, rubbing my head, rubbing my feet. I took advantage of every integrative therapy that Mass General offered. They had Reiki, they had therapeutic touch, they had massage, they had acupressure. So when I was in residence at Mass General, I always got some of these goodies on the side.
They didn't give you a hard time when you decided to take whatever natural herbal things. They were like, oh, she sounds like she knows what she's talking about and we'll let her go.
Well, I wasn't telling them every single thing. And I wasn't doing anything that we knew we weren't doing anything that was going to interfere with what they were trying to do.
Right.
We understood that the most important thing was to get rid of the cancer, and I was going to probably be uncomfortable for some of that. And then once a transplant is given to you, it takes 2 to 3 weeks or more for it to engraft. So engraftment is basically when they first start to see the evidence of some new white count. The first day that it happened, I think it was day 23 for me. It was over 3 weeks until that happened. And then, slowly you start coming back. And then I'm like, I'm going to do 1 lap around the loop. And the next day I'm going to do 2 laps. And today I'm going to do 2 laps twice.
And so how do you feel that when you decide to do the laps?
Yes.
Are you like, okay, I can't wait, or God, I really don't want to do this, but I'm going to do this anyway? Like, what's how do you mentality?
I had a lot of different kinds of days when I was living at the hospital. So some of the times, like when I was doing the blinatumomab, the immunotherapy, they put you in the hospital the first 3 or 4 days to make sure you tolerate it and don't have a bad allergic reaction. But I felt totally fine. So those were days I was getting in 8,000 or 10,000 steps. I just felt fine. And then I would go do some art over there at the table, and I'd play my guitar for a while. Then I'd write an article for somebody, and then I talk to a couple of patients. I felt fine. But during the transplant time, when it was much, much harder and I had no energy and no actual functional circulating blood, some days I just took 30 steps back and forth in my room. I never went out of the room. So there was a range. There was a range. And
in your book,
Yeah.
the name of the book, of course, is You Finished Treatment. Now what? Right? A field guide for cancer survivors. I recommend it to everyone. I read it thoroughly. So inspiring for everyone, even if you've never been diagnosed. And then here on the podcast, you talked a little bit about the microbiome. I wonder if you can expand on that, because I don't think that's talked about enough. A little bit more now. Yeah. I certainly implemented more, but I have a whole folder full of scientific papers on microbiome and cancer and prostate cancer. I'm going to be talking about it a whole lot more, but maybe you can start us off. how important is it, and why is it so important, and even mean?
Okay,
Right?
right.
Let's start there.
Let's start with that. So the microbiome is it basically, there's a lot of different ways you could define it, but one way would be to say everything that's kind of between your clavicles and your hip bones in there, that's not skin, a bone, a joint, an organ, soft tissue, and it's sort of the milieu that everything is living in. That's your microbiome. And the microbiome, the more we study it, the more we understand that it's involved with pretty much everything. It controls your immune system. It controls things related to mood and circadian rhythm. There's a lot of ways in which your microbiome impacts your digestive system, your hormonal system, and then separate from your main microbiome, a lot of the other sort of parts. As naturopathic doctors, we're really interested in understanding the whole person and not breaking people up into their contingent parts. But sometimes talking about the parts is important because we're going to aim certain treatments at them. So for instance, you have a whole microbiome in your eye. You've got a microbiome in your mouth. There's a microbiome in the genital area. There's a microbiome. We have all these that derive from the larger microbiome, but have their own thing going on. And so when we know that a lot of chemicals and strong drugs can wipe out the microbiome or increase certain of the bugs, quote unquote bugs, and knock down the good guys, bring in some of the bad guys. And when the microbiome is out of whack, a lot of things can go sideways. And so we do a lot of things in a typical developed world society that are not good for the microbiome. Alcohol is not great for the microbiome. Eating a lot of sugar is not great for the microbiome. Eating foods to which you're sensitive, not great for the microbiome. Taking antibiotics can have an impact on the microbiome. But we also know that with every drug we're taking, we're looking at what are the benefits and what are the side effects. And so sometimes we do the drug even though there's side effects because the benefits outweigh the side effects. And cancer treatment is sort of the king of that because there's so many things that are going to impact the microbiome. But it's also true that the microbiome is incredibly resilient. And so if you give it what it needs in terms of the prebiotics, like I was describing before, and by the way, prebiotics is not just potato starch. All the non-digestible fibers are prebiotics. So that's all our fruits and vegetables, all our whole grains, all the little things on the outside of the nuts and the seeds. These are things we can't really digest them, but our microbiome digests them and uses it to create more and more of a healthy microbiome. And the more you study the microbiome, it affects mood and it affects cognition. And so that's why so many times when people's digestion is off, okay, when the digestion is off, we know that the microbiome is probably out of whack. But that's also why they're irritable and depressed and anxious because it's all connected. It's all connected. So
Right.
Yeah, I feel like there's so much to be said about this. Now we have like prebiotics. And I always say to people, don't go spend money on a jar of prebiotics. Just eat a high fiber diet. You don't need another pill.
So much easier.
It's
to
so much
get
easier.
the
And
powder.
yeah.
I have to confess something to you.
Yeah.
I wish it wasn't the case, but it is. I don't like cold vegetables. I like them to be steamed. Part of it is some of the traditional Chinese medicine concepts. I think it's better for you. But man, I can't tell you that I'm going to be in the kitchen for 15 minutes and steam my vegetables every single time. So I enjoy pills and powders, like green powders, right? I enjoy just protein powders. I'm a powder and pills guy and have a decent diet. You'll be very proud. I consume fermented foods every single day. That I do.
Amazing.
Right? But so then why do I say this? I say this because this is what I do for a living, right? Counsel people on what to do, what to eat, how to exercise. And I can see the challenges. I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I can tell you like, oh my God, I wake up. I can't wait to work out today. No, most days I'm like, I don't want to do this. Right. So you add on top of that, the fact that they've been diagnosed and they're on hormone therapy and these things. So like you said, I meet them where they're at, but you have to do something. And so I find that some of these pills and powders and things are help. They help you get
100%.
some of these things in.
100%. I think the key to being a good doctor is to have a really built up, understood, diverse toolkit and to be able to choose the right tools for the right person at the right time. Right. And there's no one way to do anything, and that's including medicine. And that's something that I really learned at Mass General is like they follow the guidelines and they are not going to veer very far off the guidelines. And people there would often say to me, "You're doing so well compared to other people. You're doing so well. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." I mean, they wouldn't ask me what I was doing, which I was like, aren't you curious?
Why aren't you curious, right?
And of course, some of them did. And every one of my doctors blurbed my book. So like, I know that they get that this approach has an impact. They know they do it. And they don't really have time. They can't do all that and do that well and then do all this. They can't. And I appreciate that. I want them to do what they need to do really well. I'll do this. I'll get my team together, for me.
That's you, right? So you've been a naturopath for a long time. You know the deal. Imagine everyone else, right? It's very difficult for the regular lay person to have access and then implement all these other things. And the other challenge is that they don't want to go in contrary to what their doctors are suggesting.
Yeah,
they're afraid to tell the doctors, "Look, I'm going to take some ginger or whatever." So it's not.
The statistics now say that I think it's like 70 to 80% of people going through conventional cancer care are using some kind of natural integrative medicine on the side, whether they're telling their doctors about it or not. Right. Now, my thing is like, you should tell your doctors if you don't know what you're doing and you don't know if it's safe to do you should probably have that conversation. You don't want to do anything that's going to interfere with the efficacy of this thing that you're doing. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. But I'll give you an example. Like a lot of prostate cancer patients have radiation treatment. And we know that with radiation treatment, there are things you can do to make cancer cells more radiosensitive. So there's a supplement called quercetin. The research on it is like not equivocal. So everybody going through radiation should be taking quercetin. It's like, why wouldn't you do that? We know that if you are having radiation, if you are well perfused before you get on the table, meaning that your blood is moving well, it's going to protect the underlying organs and it's going to make any cancer cells more radiosensitive. So, schedule your radiation time so that you can get in a 20-minute walk before you get on the table. Like these are
fasting mimicking diet. I have my patients do fasting mimicking diet while they do radiation.
Yeah, these are not expensive. There's no side effects, things like that. But there is a lot to share if people are open to it. Now, I also have patients who come to me after the fact. They've been through everything. They've had surgery, they have chemo, radiation, whatever, immunotherapy. And now it's 2 years later and they're not doing that well. They're cancer free. They maybe not metastatic disease. There's no evidence of disease, but they don't feel good. They are tired. They have brain fog. They're depressed. They're anxious. They have peripheral neuropathy. They have some kind of swelling somewhere. Their digestion never really recovered. They've got chronic headaches. They get sick all the time. They have no sex drive. Look, the list goes on. And hopefully that's not all in one person. But this is like the menu of things people come in with who are survivors. And like the term really fits. Like they're just sort of surviving, but they're not thriving. And they're not feeling on their game. And they don't feel that good. And I'm sorry when people come in like that. I feel so badly. I was like, I wish I saw you a year ago. But I do feel like there's so much to offer people like that. And not that you can help everybody in every way feel 100% fabulous. Okay, whatever. But there's room for improvement. And that's something that I do feel hopeful about. And I don't like it when my cancer survivor patients say, well, I'm so lucky to be alive. I can live with fill in the blank. I'm like, well, yeah, I kind of hear you, but like, let's try. We have nothing to lose. We might as well try. And here are the things that I have tried myself, or the things that are in the literature. We can try things. Yeah. So I'm saying that because I want people to feel like there's possibility of, without giving false hope. Like that's very important for me. I don't want to give anybody false hope. I don't want to promise somebody the moon, but I want to like take somebody's hand and walk with them and say, let's try a few things together. I think we can aim at that. And I always try to help my patients prioritize. What is the thing that you feel is most limiting for you at this moment in time? Let's go after that thing.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. That is also very healing. There's something beyond what science can prove that is so deep at an energetic level, right? To heal, right?
Yes.
The last thing I'd like you to discuss, Amy, thanks again. This is so inspiring, and I feel so joyous that you're here and sharing your story with our audience and with me. What are your top look, I know we can have a master class for a week on supplements and botanicals for cancer.
Yes.
But what would you say is your like top 5 during treatment and then afterwards to keep you well?
Yeah.
What are the kinds of things that you look for?
During treatment, it's really 100% dependent on what the treatment is. There's nothing that I would give everybody, literally not one thing.
Medicinal mushrooms a no for any treatment of like chemo? I know we're not being too specific, but
Yeah.
how are
Yeah.
medicinal mushrooms during treatment?
Yeah. I err on the side of not wanting to interfere with anything. So I don't do a lot during treatment with botanicals. I just get worried. I don't think there's enough research. Yeah. I mean, that said, there are certain things that we know are very good during treatment that we should be doing based on the particular chemotherapy. So things like quercetin, things like berberine, things like fish oil, B vitamins, like depending on the specific chemo, and that includes the mushrooms as well. But I would not. The list is there's too many kinds of chemo to go through those one by one.
Absolutely.
Afterward, for mopping up so for mopping up, it's sort of like depends on what we're mopping up from and how the person's feeling and what their symptoms are. But if we're just talking about what are we doing in terms of cancer prevention, what are we doing in terms of the prevention of recurrence, the clear ones in my mind are vitamin D. I like people to have a vitamin D level between 70, 60 and 80, something like that.
Okay.
High, 50 and 70. I don't want it in the 30s or 40s. I want it higher. So if it's not higher, we're going to supplement until it gets there and keep it there. And people living in the Northeast, it's hard to keep the vitamin D levels up because of the level of sun and the amount of sun people are going to get. And then they shouldn't be in the sun because of skin cancers, blah, blah, blah. Fish oil, almost everybody is going to get on fish oil. For me, it's just some very good research on fish oil. And it's also good for mood and prevention of cognitive decline. Then I like to think about some of the strong antioxidants. So for me, my favorite antioxidants are things like CoQ10 and berberine, green tea extract, and curcumin. Those 4 are the ones that I will just use over and over again in terms of preventing recurrence and having their known anti-cancer effect in addition to the medicinal mushrooms, the lion's mane, the chaga. There's a lot of them, and I like a combination. I like mixing them up. I do think about that. Sometimes when people are doing well, they're like, well, should I just keep staying on this? And am I well because I'm on these? Or should I be mixing them up and giving my body something different to look at so that it has the ability to kind of respond to something new? I think these are questions of our profession that we're all still.
What do you think of that?
grappling with.
I don't know what I think of that. I don't know that it's that simple that, let's mix it up. Let's confuse the cancer cells. Let's throw this and then that. It throws in yet another thing to do for the patient, yet another thing to remember. Oh, did I take? No, I should take these, and just more confusion because I just don't have enough evidence that do something for a couple of weeks and then do something else for another couple of weeks that helps. So what's your?
I like to review every 6 months or so with a patient who is holding their own, cancer free, but they're in my care as a survivor every 6 months. So we just like to review because sometimes they'll have like another illness that's kind of come along. Maybe they've now developed some like skin issues. And so we're going to tweak based on their overall health. Maybe they've got some like cardiovascular family history. Do we need to be thinking about that? Person like that, I'm going to probably lean more into like the CoQ10 than a person who doesn't have any cardiovascular thing. So a lot has to do with the individual. But yeah, I don't think the jury's back on that. But I do say to patients also, consider this. Why don't you take your supplements 5 days a week, take the weekends off? I don't think there's anything set in stone that you got to take every single day, 2 or 3 times a day. Like, I think it's okay. Or if you miss a day, don't worry about it. I mean, I see some people running around. They've got these pill cases that are like that big. They're taking things.
My order has not come in yet, so I missed a couple of days kind of thing.
Yeah, they get worried, or they're just taking things 4 or 5 times a day, and it's interfering with. It's not that fun. So we try to streamline it and give people breaks and be responsive to how they're feeling. And also, one thing I will say is I like to introduce supplements with people 1 supplement at a time. So I might write up a whole plan. Maybe there's 5 or 6 things on it. We're just going to do 1 for a week. Then we're going to add the second one. Then we're going to add the third one.
And you do that to see if they tolerate it?
People can have an individual negative response to anything, a food, a supplement, a drug. And if I've given them 5 or 6 things at once, I'm not going to know what's doing what. So when I'm writing up the plan, I'm like, start with this one, second week add this one, third one add, like that. Or if they say to me, I've taken melatonin, melatonin, I'll give everybody melatonin. Even if they don't have sleep problems, it just has some very good anti-cancer effects, just even like 5 milligrams before bed. And for some people, melatonin will make them dream a lot. And it's not nightmares, but it's too much dreaming. If that's the person, then we don't do it, because good sleep is essential for overall health. So
20 milligrams a night of melatonin, that's what a lot of our colleagues do, some research around that. Is that too high, or is that a good amount for certain people?
I've never gone that high myself, because I am one of those people who gets that dreaming. I just do 3 milligrams a night. I think any amount is probably going to be good. If somebody could do 20, fine. It's not an expensive supplement, but probably 5 to 10 is enough. And I'm curious how that research will come. I'm going to listen to the research.
Yeah.
As it evolves.
Dr. Amy Rothenberg, thank you for being on once again. Final words, and how can people find you and your work and your book, which is going to be on our show notes, and your practice?
Yeah, you bet. Thank you for that. Well, my final note is that, we're living in very challenging times, just in terms of the world and the political situation, and a lot of stress. The news cycle is really bad. So I want to remind everybody, it's okay to take a break, take a news fast. News fast is very good. I always told my children, you have to be the caretaker of your own soul. Nobody else can do that for you. So it's okay to take some downtime. Having cancer is an opportunity to reinvent yourself. You can decide, you know what, I didn't really like that line of work. I'm going to do something totally different. You get a kind of free pass. So I invite you to consider that if you're somebody going through cancer treatment at this time. I'd like to remind everybody that everybody's going to die of something at some point. We're all just trying to hang on as long as we can with best quality of life as possible. There are answers to lots of your challenges through natural integrative medicine. Find yourself a good naturopathic doctor, integrative medicine doctor to work with on your team.
How do you do that?
There's a lot of different ways to do that. The conventional medical world is sort of slowly moving toward naturopathic medicine in many ways. And there are integrative medicine doctors that you can find by just typing in integrative medicine doctor in your town or your city. The American Association of Naturopathic Doctors does have a find part on their website.
How about those that are specialists in oncology? I think that's what I would want. I want somebody that knows a lot about oncology.
Yes. There's the Oncology Association of Naturopathic Physicians, and there is a whole diplomat status. I do not have it myself.
Neither do I.
Doctors who have gotten extensive additional training. They're called FADNOs, Fellows of the American blah, 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 blah. And those are very educated and informed people. But I would also add that even an entry-level naturopathic doctor has a lot of the kind of training that could help a person going through conventional cancer care and afterward. I feel that. And for me, I practice in Western Mass in Northampton, and I'm also able to do telemedicine. And you can find my book anywhere books are sold. And I always encourage people to try to buy it at a small local bookstore. They'll order it for you. You'll get it in a couple of days. And if you want a signed copy, you can email my office and we'll get that out to you. And
what's your office email? Hopefully you get bombarded by emails. That would be a good thing.
It's nhcmed@gmail.com. I think it'll be it's in the show notes. I think that's the office email. It's office at nhcmed.com. That's what it is.
At NHCmed?
Office at nhcmed.com. That's what it is. And then I am somebody who I've done a fair number of podcasts on a lot of different interviews on a lot of different topics. And I've written extensively on all kinds of topics in natural medicine. You can type in my name and then gastroesophageal reflux disease. And I've written an article on that, or toilet training. I mean, I've written a lot. I've been writing for 40 years and I've had a lot of wonderful experiences in this field, and it's an incredible career. And I've shared a lot of what I experience and what I know. So, yeah. Anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, my love. I'm flawed that we've had this conversation. I feel so inspired, and I feel more educated about cancer care, integrative cancer care.
Amazing. All right. Well, I hope to see you soon, and take good care and keep up the good fight.
Thank you. You too. You
Good night.
too. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for watching this episode. Really inspiring episode, I have to say, on putting you back on the driver's seat if you're battling any cancer, or if you know anyone that's battling any cancer, maybe you want to forward them this episode. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for wherever you're watching or listening to this. Remember to like, to subscribe. It helps the podcast, and we want to get the word around. So much love to you as always. Hang in there, thrive. Don't only survive. This is Dr. Geo signing off. Much love. See you next time.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. You will continue to receive powerful interviews and insights to support your prostate health journey. For those who want to dive deeper, our exclusive membership offers even more.
If you love what you heard today, you can help by leaving a 5-star review of the podcast on Apple and Spotify, as each review helps us reach more men who are serious about improving their urological health and how to function better with age. And for the latest research and actionable takeaways in the world of men's health and integrative urology, sign up for my newsletter at drgeo.com. I'll see you next time.